So I'll be talking about the redemptive gift of the prophet, and really like the exercise, but it was challenging too because I'm a technologist by heart and an analyst by nature, so I do tend to overanalyze stuff, and so a lot of those questions are like going back, like how would I answer this now versus maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Did I answer it correctly? So, that is been a challenge. But I do like the tool because it allows us to, and what Wanda was saying too, it's a framework, it's a roadmap, to give us an idea as to where you're at. I could tell for myself, just a lot of these things have changed over the years, simply because I became aware of them and I worked to change some of that. So when I took the assessment, I scored highest on the prophet. That was like 58. But then I had a close second was ruler, and then teacher and exhorter came in third place. So it wasn't a definitive, okay, this is where it's at. So when I look at this, it's more like a Venn diagram. It's okay, where are these different things intersecting, and how that changes over time. And the same thing was for all the motivational gifts. I actually scored the same on prophet and teacher. That was the number one, and then giver, second was ruler, and then in third place I had two, giver and exhorter. So the same. So then I'm like, well, did I do the test incorrectly? Isn't it supposed to tell me exactly what it is? So like Wanda was saying, then you pick one. When you start reading through the documentation, that's where some of those other characteristics actually resonate with me. And it's like, oh yeah, if I could give myself a 10 on that one, then I would have. And so that was the kind of like the deciding factor for me. All right, so in the prophet, we're looking at this also in your different groups or areas. So the introduction for the prophet gift was that you're hardwired. And I'm like, yes, that's me. I'm hardwired. Sometimes like, yeah, I want to change this, but I can't because this is who God created me. This is in my DNA. So, it's not an excuse to say, oh, well, I was created that way, I'm born this way, I'm just going to stay that way. So no, you're supposed to grow in these things. So, but I was hardwired to hear God speak. And that was always because I grew up in a church that was considered a cessationist church. So you didn't have the kind of thing that we're talking about here tonight. So when I started hearing God speak, I was like, okay, either I'm hearing God speak or I'm going crazy. It's one or the other one. And so when I started reaching out to people, they're like, yeah, I don't know if you can hear God speak, but getting connected to Pray Winchester and Pastor Bobby, and then ultimately to, Crossroads, where this thing is like, oh, this is common. You find your tribe. You find the other people that are like you. I know when I joined the prophetic roundtable, Carol said, you're not crazy, but you're not normal either. And to me, that was, it felt so welcoming because it's like, yes, there are other people like that, right? So I think that's the whole point is, there are other ears and noses and feet, and, we're all part of a bigger body. Just come together and find the other noses or ears or wherever, and, build your tribe from that point. So some of the behavioral characteristics for the prophet is a simplistic worldview. And, we see the world as black and white, wrong or right, on or off. It's very simplistic. And I think it's Einstein that said, make it as simple as possible, but not any simpler. Because, at some point things are complicated, but we tend to see the world as black and white, and we all know the world isn't black and white, right? So it doesn't take long before you start adapting. It's like, well, maybe I should consider that there are other values other than black and white, because it's not the world. But by having that as a starting point, you make that progress. Also, characteristic is we take initiative, we innovate and we lead, and improve or change or quit. That is kind of how I've seen myself. And a lot of this actually came out in my career over time, and also in family and other relationships, right? It's like where you get to practice leading, and then you figure out, well, why do I think this way? Why am I different, than other people and how they evaluate things? But if you could ask my teams at work, my philosophy is lead, follow, get out of the way. It's like, it goes back to that simplistic worldview. It's black or white, right? It's like, we got to move forward. And like I said, that's a very harsh kind of approach sometimes, and then over time you learn to actually soften it, right? Because you don't want to burn bridges and burn relationships. It's actually building a relationship, because that's what the kingdom is about, right? Is reaching other people. Also visionaries, and that's where, like with my career as an IT program manager, that's essentially what we do. It's like I get tasked with go make this thing happen, and then you got to build the vision, you got to build the team, get people to work together, plan out the tasks. That's all of the kind of like my natural. Well, this is part of my DNA, so that kind of stuff comes naturally to me. So over time, I started off as an electrical engineer. That's my formal education, but then kind of drifted into other areas of IT, where eventually I'm like, okay, I'm a project manager, and that just seemed to naturally align with some of these gifts and talents that I was born with. And also part of like when you start seeing when you look at the questions, is look at the feedback that people have been giving you, right? Like all of us that work in the secular world, you probably have some kind of performance planning that you have to submit, and you get reviewed against that. So you get feedback from your managers, and there's 360-degree feedback now from your coworkers, the people that you lead. But many of them start pointing out the same kind of characteristics and say, like I know one of my managers said, I'm a chaos coordinator. And so she would move me to all of these projects that were in trouble. I said, but I don't like that. That puts me in an uncomfortable. She's like, well, yeah, but you're good at creating structure from the chaos. And so I became the chaos coordinator. I was like, okay, just one of those other labels. I'll add this when we start seeing these labels. So am I a prophet? Am I this or that? How that helped me earlier on was to find the keywords that I have to go research, the books that I have to read, right? Oh, somebody called me a prophetic intercessor. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but then you go read up on it, right? So that's one of the things that I do. Is like I like to read a lot and do research. So it's just these things actually gives us clues as to what to go read, and how to navigate this if you're still not sure. One of the other characteristics is like I still self-identify as an introvert, and people tell me, you're not an introvert. I'm like, no, when I was born, I just became, because you're either an introvert or an extrovert, but now they're saying, well, there's something like an ambivert, where you kind of, I'm like, I like that, because maybe that's where I fit, right? It's not one or the other. It's maybe, because you change over time. So again, these labels just help with navigating this roadmap. Well, and then one of the kind of like the frameworks for this is the sevens in Scripture. I thought that was interesting because we operate by principles. And to me, that was one of the questions, like if I could give myself a 10, I would give myself a 10, because that just resonated with me. It's the operating by natural laws. And so I have personally documented what I call axioms, like 27 of them. And that's how I manage my work, my family, So action number 1 is about scheduling. And it goes, what doesn't get scheduled, doesn't get done. Axiom number 3 is organization. Everything has a place and everything is in its place. So, because when you start creating that framework, and she's like, well, Dad, you're actually a hypocrite because that thing has a place and it's not in its place and it's your thing. I'm like, yes, however, since we moved, I haven't found the right place for this thing yet. And therefore, cut your old man some slack, because I'm working on building the shed because we need another shed for this stuff to go into. But then what happens in the prophetic is when the church was going through the basic principles, the foundational stuff, I bought a shed that was supposed to be a one Saturday job. I spent 4 weekends building just the foundation for a plastic shed. And it took like 4 hours to assemble the shed once the foundation was laid, but it's God speaking to me through make sure you build the best foundation, even if it's for a plastic shed, because this is what the church is covering. And I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, Lord, I get it. Can we move on to building the shed now? Because Z is calling me a hypocrite, and I don't like that. So it's just part of, like I said, hardwired to hear him speak. And once you get tuned into it, he speaks through everything. Like, oh my goodness. It's like, oh, people, I'm like, am I going crazy because he's speaking through this and he's speaking through this? And, the principle of that is the principle of design. He created prophetic people with the prophetic gift, prophetic intercessors, to have just a very intimate relationship with him just by default. You don't have to really work at it. I got the point when he kidnapped me and my family in 2010, and he took me to where there's no signals, and I'm in the height of IT, and the worst thing you can do to an IT network administrator at the time is to go dark, because I had to give short notice to my boss. The way that he tricked us into going to this really remote place, we thought it was an hour away. No, it's 3 hours away. So I had to take Friday off. And I told my boss, don't worry, got my phone. I will monitor my emails and stuff. I get there, there's no cell reception. There's nothing, right? So I'm like, this is not good, right? It's like what they call you go dark in IT. It's like, oh, you're not connected to anything. And I'm like, I heard him so clearly during that week, and he said, I am not going to shout. I'm going to whisper. It's up to you to create the space on a daily basis to hear those whispers. Right? And I'm like, okay, Lord, I get it. I'll do that. And then from there, it was just amazing. Like I said, the downloads and just connecting with him, that very personal and intimate relationship. And also the fulfillment of this gift, prophets are really called to lead, and it's leading ourselves and others to excellence. So I'm almost amazed how God kind of used my career as basically a training ground for this stuff, right? Leading different teams, doing projects, global projects. Just, I get to practice a lot of those things. So I've always thought that was interesting. But then we're also called to challenge. It's the challenge of comfort and complacency. It is to get people to say, let's go in this direction. My time is up. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.